It's another Manly Monday, and I'm here, still battling COVID. This is a weird virus, man. I'll give you a bit of an update before we get into it real quick. I'm the respiratory stuff is, I'd say, 80% better, but now I've got the weirder symptoms, like the inability to sleep. Um, Still smell or taste, it's like 20% what it should be. And a bunch of other weird. I've got the numbness in the like lower the extremities, um, and a few other symptoms that I'll spare you because they're kind of overshares. But this has been an exercise in humility, man, and I thank you all very, very much for your patience with with everything. I'll do the slate, even though it's not a great segue. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Or by one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it, can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. Maybe I'll overshare with the patrons. But yeah, we're talking today about the difference between confidence and ego. And you might be saying, why is this not a Wellness Wednesdays video? I struggle with this on a bunch of topics, and sometimes it's more of a gut feeling than anything, but this particular one is because Manly Mondays isn't about issues that only affect men, right? Manly Mondays is about issues that affect men or predominantly affect men, but it's from the point of view of advice and information for men. If women and non-binary people want to watch the content too, that's great, but it's aimed at guys. And confidence and ego, those two things, let's face it, they're very different paradigms with, masculine gender construction and feminine gender construction. Women can get away with being less confident. That is just a double standard. Now, it bites you long term, but there's definitely more social permissions for insecurity, open insecurity in women. And I don't think it's better or worse overall. I think it's just different. But let's move on, because I think that one of the things that, this idea of you got to be confident, go out and get things and all that stuff I think that that's partially connected to the male loneliness epidemic, because it is reasonable to extrapolate that if somebody has to appear confident, then they're not going to talk about what's bothering them as much, and they're going to withdraw and so on and so forth, right? So the difference between confidence and ego is important, because if you're aiming for confidence and end up with ego, you're not going to get the benefits of confidence, right? And there is a degree of subjectivity to this that is really real, ongoing theme with Manly Mondays, right? And that, I think, is the thing that so many people struggle with, is how unfair the subjectivities can be. And that's very real, right? I'm validating that. And that's part of the reason I'm talking about this stuff. So, real short reminder: ego focuses on speaking and negatives, being heard and criticizing, right? Whereas confidence is about listening and positives, right? I mean, no, like, trust me on this one, okay? If you need a benchmark to tell the difference between ego and confidence, that's it. A confident person doesn't have to be heard on absolutely everything. An ego-driven person is obsessed with speaking, of speaking their mind, of inflicting their opinions on other people. And this gets confused a lot because confidence is depicted as somebody who gets out there and speaks and addresses crowds and people listen when they talk. And the thing is, it's really counterintuitive. People listen to you when you talk more when you're not as invested in being heard. And that may sound really weird. And I can't entirely explain why it works. Maybe if I was in better health, I would. But, part of the thing I had to train myself out of, coming out of academia and getting into media, entertainment media, was this, academic, make your point strongly. And I remember when I did a talk, it was an academic talk, at it was officially a history conference, but it was a Mormon conference on Mormon cosmology and the Twilight Saga. And I was on a panel with 2 other speakers, and one did Battlestar Galactica, another person did the show Big Love, and I did Twilight. It was either that or a retrospect thing on Mitt Romney's presidential campaign that tells you what had happened. And they got up there and they did it right, rah, strong, pound the table, all that stuff. And, this was, none of us were Mormon on the panel. We were speaking to Mormon people, like the room was dead split between Church of Christ on one side, LDS on the other side. There was a bit of tension, but it's Mormons. Even the tension was kind of nice and friendly. And I got up there and I just talked to them. And I had 2 versions of my talk prepared. One, the proper way. And the other, I had a bellwether joke. And if they laughed, I was going to go more conversational, jokey. And if it bombed, I was going to bail out and do it the quote-unquote proper academic way. Right? And I was the least experienced speaker on the panel, at least in academic circles, and they had me go last. But the other 2 were pound the table, negatives, criticism, ego, right? And I got up there and I just talked, right? I told jokes, I talked to people, like I remember it was, okay, who's seen Twilight? Nobody in that room had. Who has read a Twilight book? Who's seen a Twilight book cover? More people. I said, who has seen a bus ad, TV commercial, radio, something, because it was a popular culture phenomenon at the time. Everyone in the room's hand went up, everybody laughed, and I'm like, okay, fine. And I went with my presentation about how the Twilight Saga, the first book, anyway, before it became the phenomenon, actually fulfills all 13 articles of the Mormon faith. And Stephanie Myers is Mormon, or she was at the time. I don't know if she still is, but the audience of Mormons sat politely through the other 2 ego-driven presentations and then asked me a bunch of questions at the end, and they were very animated. And that's the difference between ego and confidence, is confidence will draw people to you. It will be a pleasant experience for everyone involved because there's a give and take. And I didn't go into that room needing to say a particular thing. I went into that room to read the room and adapt accordingly. And that's, been one thing that, has served me fairly well. And I did not start off this way. It was a learned skill. I went through a phase where I would get the rejection over with words, that tendency to be abrasive. And so you can control when somebody thinks you're an asshole. It's a good skill to be able to engage in for effect, but it's really important to be able to not do it as well. And that's the thing about ego. When you're obsessed with talking, when you're obsessed with being heard, and you're obsessed with criticism, who wants to be around that? You can't share, right? Or at least you don't seem to share. Whereas a confident person is more interested in listening and going, okay, so what about that? What about that? What about that? And, and emphasizing the positives, that doesn't mean ignoring the negatives, and it's not therapy. One of my top 10 phrases is ignoring negatives isn't being positive, but you focus on the positives. And a client of mine had a review on his novel, and he got me to read it, and I'm not going to disclose any confidences, obviously, but he got me to read it, and he got an editor to read it. I was just sort of general impressions, advice sort of thing. And what was interesting is that broad strokes, the feedback was the same. But he sent me the editor's feedback, and I was like, whoa, my ass hurts from this. And there was no need to be that mean. It was very judgmental. It was very statement driven. It was very focused on the negatives. Whereas my feedback was, these parts of the books are so good that we need to bring these other ones up to match the good parts. And they identified the exact same thing. But you'd say, well, you were just being nicer. No, I was being more effective. I knew what it was like to be the person under review, because I've had to do it so often. Everything I put out is open to the masses, open for people to read whatever the fuck into it that they want. But, I also have to submit other things for corporate work and all that stuff. So I know what it's like to be in the hot seat. And I'm confident enough in my ability to give good advice that I'm not invested in someone taking it. And I think that's better, because at the end of the day, if I advise on a work, it is still the author's work, right? It's just my opinion. I could be dead wrong. And if they, ignore 9 of my suggestions, but take one and it's really pivotal, hey, I still did my job, right? Still got paid. But that's confidence as opposed to ego. Like, why did you hire me if you weren't going to listen to me? Rah, 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 rah. You see a lot of that in media. A lot of that in media. And one of the things I enjoy about game development is there are egos in game dev. But they're nowhere near as common as television or radio. And I've found that podcasting is actually a lot more like radio than games. In terms of entertainment media, game dev is, because it's collaborative, it feels more like my old theater days, which is, where I started, and I realize more and more I miss. Because the thing that was cool about theater that isn't true about TV is an actor is rewarded in television for being the best part of a mediocre show, right? That's the best way to win an Emmy or an Oscar, be a standout, right? Whereas with theater, because it's everybody's there together, right? There's no retakes in a run of a play. And so you have to support each other, because if one person just blanks or flubs, the whole thing stops, right? There's nobody yelling cut. And there's a reason some people, famous actors who are actually actors, even though they make a lot of money doing movies, they go back and do theater because of that experience. And that, again, is the difference between ego and confidence, right? Ego is, oh, everything's going to be perfect and I'm going to get a big check and all that stuff. And confidence is, yeah, I like going back to the craft where things go wrong where the audience sees it, right? There's no CGI retouching in theater. There's no retakes in theater. And does that mean you don't get nervous? No, you're always nervous. That never totally goes away. But you have confidence in your team, you have confidence in the work, and that gets you through even when you don't necessarily have confidence in your own abilities. And that's where I want to get to the last part of this video, because people watching it might go, yeah, but I'm not confident. And this was something that really pissed me off when I was younger. You need to be confident. You need to be confident. I was like, what the hell does that mean? I mean, there are some things I'm confident in. I was for being so introverted, I don't know how I did. Well, I do know how I did what I did. The only way I can overcome my introversion is when I care enough about something for the words to come out, And it can't be about me. It has to be about the work, the issue, the topic. Because again, I'm the most common bit of feedback on me personally is that I'm annoying and irritating. Truth. You get used to it. I've been rewatching The Boys to tolerate some other stuff I've been watching, and I'm reminded again of why I relate to Butcher on that show so much, because there's a guy who uses words to keep people at a distance because he knows every room he walks into, most people actively hate his guts. And I know what that's like. Cancellations are fun, man. Yeah, when the most common repetitive feedback you get is something negative and highly subjective, right? And I know that, you regular people in my call, you guys don't think I'm annoying, right? But when things are positive, people tend to either say nothing or focus on individual things. When people want to be negative, it's, ad hominem, sweeping, the new one I'm getting is gross a lot. And it's like, I used to get cringe, but cringe is sort of fallen out of favor because I think people recognize the term cringe was cringeworthy. But it's weird how these catch-all negative terms, and you guys know I'm very not big on lazy, judgy terms. Talked on Feedback Friday about creepy being in there, bitch. Mary Sue is another one that I just find, say what you mean. Don't use this shifty, mushy, hard to get your arms around a definition. Do not define Mary Sue in the comments. Don't. That's just ego. Let it go. You don't have to be heard here. Let it go like Elsa. And this fixation on criticism is, to me, an indication of how little confidence there really is out there. And a lot of you are probably thinking now, but Leanna, you come in here and criticize stuff all the time. And it's part of having opinions, right? One of the things that I always really struggled with when I was a game reviewer is writing a review when I didn't like the game. Because negative reviews get more traffic than positive ones. But I don't like dumping on someone's work. But sometimes you have to. Because if you don't show judgment, then why is anybody going to take your word when it comes to spending their money? Fair point. And so that's when it comes to giving feedback, you criticize to make it better. You criticize from a positive place. And I think that's what's really lacking in a lot of the writing out there is people aren't critiquing, people aren't criticizing from a positive place. They're criticizing from a negative place. They're criticizing out of ego. Ho, ho, I'm lording over you, this thing, you know, maker of media. Feel my wrath. You know, nobody likes that. That's why games journalism has such a terrible reputation, is the ego just reeks, just seeps through everything, whereas anybody who actually has to be, you know, judged on that standard with something they make and care about, everybody's like, look, you know, one of the things you realize when you make stuff is how hard it is to make stuff. And I comment, and this will be relevant with tomorrow's video where I talk about something connected to the Sandman show. Getting anything made, especially at that level, is so hard. And I think that any criticism of something has to come from a place where you realize just getting that thing finished is fucking hard. And if you don't have the confidence born of experience to come at it from that place, all your critique is going to be is ego. And I'll leave you with another anecdote about this. It was this interesting. At first, it was a clickbaity headline about, you know, Peter Jackson said Amazon Lord of the Rings series ghosted him. And I'm like, Peter Jackson doesn't tend to talk trash. And I read the article, and of course it was Peter Jackson relating it as sort of a funny anecdote. And he made the point of saying, look, I know how hard adapting this stuff is. I will watch it. I absolutely wish them well. It's just kind of funny that they contacted me. I said, you have to send me scripts because I know how hard this is, and never heard from again. Right? So the headline was, sensational. But and you might be saying, that's humble. That's not confident. Humility comes out of confidence. So how are you more confident? Experience is a big confidence builder. But also, I am a big believer in goals that you set for yourself that you can control no matter what. Goals that are based on the opinions of others will just lead to ego and bruised egos, because people come to the table with their own baggage, man. Like, that is real. And if you're going to give other people the power to define you in your own mind, you are constantly going to feel like a cracked eggshell emotionally. Whereas if you set goals like, you know, this being sick, it's like, I'm going to produce content and my goal is to just get the content done. It's not going to be the greatest content I've ever made. And if I'm feeling up to it, I'll read the comments. If I'm not feeling up to it, I'm not going to. But getting the content done, prepping it so that it is decent, even though it's not going to be my best work, and getting it done, I can control that. What people's reactions to it are going to be, I can't control. I am, just when I think I have a handle on how people are going to react on the internet, the zeitgeist shifts and I'm lost again. So I just sort of hit the point where I'm running my own race. Running up that hill. I went there. Sorry. And, you know, am I confident in my opinions? Sure. Am I confident that I'm halfway good at the stuff I do? Sure. Do I need everyone to like it? You know, am I defined by views or clicks or subscribers or all that stuff? No, because that's ego. I'm interested in the quality of the content and setting an example that one, people can internalize. Because if I'm giving advice like this, I should seem like, I'm capable of adulting, because otherwise why listen to me? And there's no requirement to listen to me. These videos are for interest's sake. But also just, I like dialogue. Like I said, confidence, feeling secure, comes from a place of listening. And that's part of the reason I say over and over and over, I have no issue if somebody has a different point of view than me. But I'm less interested in who's right or wrong, and I'm much more interested in why someone has that view. The problem is that when someone's coming from a place of ego, they tend to be really bad at backing up their position. Why? Because it's an ego-driven position. It's just, I like this because I feel like it reflects well on me. I don't like this because I feel that it's not for me, or doesn't reflect well on me, or shows people like me are less relevant, less powerful, so on and so forth. As opposed to, a confident perspective is someone, you may notice I have no problem poking sacred cows, and watch tomorrow's video. And I am cool saying I like less popular things. But that's because I'm confident enough in my judgment. I'm confident enough that I know what I'm talking about. I don't have to be the absolute best and right all the time. And the older I get, the more comfortable I am with being wrong, because you learn things when you're wrong. But, that's the path to peace of mind. And it really does come from what your expectation is going into any scenario. Confidence comes from boundaries, one. But two, setting goals you can control. So if you're not, the biggest social butterfly, if talking to people is difficult, set a goal. I'm going to go in and I'm going to talk to 5 people. It could be even something as simple as saying hello. The outcome doesn't matter. Just, I'm going to say hello to 5 people, right? Hi. I'm going to say hello to 5 people and give them an honest compliment, preferably about something above the neck, unless it's like a t-shirt intended to be seen. But, people like it when, if they do a talk at something, hey, I really liked your talk, but give detail. Like this particular thing you said about this particular thing, I found especially interesting. And then ask a question. How did you come to that conclusion? Or something like that. See? Switching to listening mode. That's an indication of confidence. As opposed to what a lot of people do at nerd events, which is show up after you've done your talk, or show up at your booth and tell you what's up with your own work. And the best way to show you're being driven by ego is tell another person what's in their head. Unless you're just being a little shit or a troll or something like that, in which case have at it, right? It's, if that's all you're doing, that's all you're doing. But you're not looking for a positive outcome with that, right? I don't think most trolls are the most confident people. I think there is a lot of ego in modern trolling. It didn't used to be. The lulls were a real thing at one point, at least the circles I traveled in. However, I wouldn't do that today. I did it back in the day. I was kind of scary good at it. But, that was back when I was keeping people at arm's length with words so I could control the rejection because I was less confident. Now I don't have to do that. And now I don't want to do it, because why? I want to focus on positives. I want to focus on the cool things people are doing. And I want to focus on giving people space to express their cool things, because I learn a lot from you guys. And again, listening in positives as opposed to needing to speak, needing to be heard, and a negative framing. That is the difference between confidence and ego. And that will help you build your confidence And this has been Manly Mondays. So help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who needs help working on their confidence, who can use it but can't afford it. And I've lost, there we go. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching. Almost made it through this Manly Monday. Oh, COVID.